If you're familiar with my channel, you're probably aware that I love to go to movies for inspiration for my tabletop RPG stories and characters. But if you're not familiar with my channel, well, now you know. My primary focus when playing World of Darkness set games is Vampire the Masquerade. However, I'm always willing to throw my d10s and write up a werewolf, a mage, a wraith, or most any other game that shares the setting. So this list isn't going to be just vampire movies. In fact, there aren't any, but other movies that make me think of the World of Darkness and how I believe that world feels. Themes, mood, etc. This list is only a top 5, so tons of media aren't on the list. If you're a longtime player, this list probably isn't going to match yours, and that's totally cool. Let me know your list in the comments. But if you're new to the game lines and settings, hopefully this list will give you some direction and inspire some of your future World of Darkness gameplay. To find out my top 5, roll 2d10. The World of Darkness is a massive, Gothic-inspired, multifaceted world of incalculable horror, constant decay, creeping madness, and ubiquitous rebellion. It is Gothic punk. With that said, there are some noticeable movies that I'm not going to include on this list for obvious reasons. These are films that everyone should see if you have an interest in the World of Darkness. Batman, the first film with Michael Keaton, Underworld and Blade for really obvious reasons, Interview with a Vampire, New Jack City, The Lost Boys, Near Dark, The Crow, and Dark City. These movies are introductory for anyone curious about the gothic punk aesthetic of Vampire the Masquerade and other games. A world like ours, but just a little bit darker. Open a core book, and these movies are likely on the list of films you should watch for inspiration. And yeah, you should watch these. But that's not much of a list, is it? Removing these films from the conversation, here's my list of the top 5 movies, mostly, that inspire my World of Darkness. Number 5. Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth is a relatively new movie to me, having been introduced to it only a few years ago. However, this dark fantasy film intertwines the real and the mythical expertly. One part fairy tale, one part story of wartime rebellion. This forebodingly twisted story is full of magic and monsters. If you haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth, watch it now. When you do, think of it from that new perspective of the World of Darkness. Number 4. Seven. If you were ever curious what it was like to be an average person in my World of Darkness games, this movie is a significant clue. Dark and filthy, the city plays a substantial role in this disturbing crime thriller, and we never even really know what city the movie takes place in. The rainy, dismal, overcast maze could be any city. It could be your city. 2 detectives hunt down a disturbed and depraved serial killer as he exacts his biblical vengeance on those he sees as deserving of the ultimate punishment. One detective is a veteran, jaded and set in his ways, seeing the end of his career approaching. The other, his young replacement, is eager to get his hands dirty and prove his ability. Both men are pushed beyond their limits of decency by a methodical, seemingly supernatural foe, and neither man will ever be the same. Seven is, in my opinion, a movie that perfectly encapsulates the moods of Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness as a whole. The only time the sun shines in this world is when the detectives are firmly in the web of John Doe, the anonymous serial killer. Number 3. The Departed. While there's nothing about this film that's supernatural, for me, it expertly encapsulates the conspiratorial nature of the World of Darkness. Set in a fictionalized Boston, notorious gangster and Whitey Bulger stand-in Frank Costello spends 20 years grooming a young boy, Colin Sullivan, for a future as a mole within the Massachusetts State Police. Sullivan graduates and joins the Special Affairs Division, quietly leaking information back to Costello. Meanwhile, recruit Billy Costigan goes undercover to infiltrate Costello's gang. Stripped of his freedom and sent to jail, Costigan must live the life of a criminal to avoid detection. Unfortunately, his mental state begins to slip as this tense cat and mouse conspiracy plays out. For me, the themes of this movie hit so close to the world of darkness that it's scary. The main characters in The Departed walk a razor's edge between loyalty and duty, doing what's good for the wrong reasons and doing evil for the greater good, aligned perfectly with the classic premise of the world of darkness. While the gangsters and authorities aren't vampires, they make excellent analogs for them. From the complex manipulations, the mystery of who is ally or enemy, and the omnipresent danger to the constant, unending conflict between law and order, The Departed could be a stand-in for any sect conflict in the world of darkness. Number 2. True Detective Season 1. So, I cheated and picked a TV show. So what? The first season of True Detective hit me in the dark and mysterious spot when it first aired on HBO. Oh, crap. I just realized that my list is full of crime cinema. Well, I guess that's a bit telling. Anyway, True Detective centers around two retired Louisiana State Police homicide detectives after investigating the murder of a prostitute in 1995. The two deeply flawed, potentially broken men must revisit the investigation after similar crimes emerge years later. This creepy, unsettling story permeates with an ever-present air of evil. While it only scratches the surface of the supernatural, the mysterious characters, locations, and themes hearken to the bizarre of the world of darkness. Hidden conspiracies shelter the powerful and influential. Their dark and twisted desires are buried just beneath the surface. Beyond the basic premise of True Detective, the world in which the characters reside is oppressive, decaying, and dangerous, like a twisted version of our own world. Faith, depravity, lunacy, and the looming apocalypse hides behind every door. True Detective Season 1 is one of my favorite pieces of cinema in the last 20 years. It's an intense ride that's worth a rewatch if you need inspiration for a chronicle, a character, or just the world beyond the city. Number 1. Candyman. You could put just about any Clive Barker story in this slot. For my money though, Candyman is about the best of Barker's adaptations. Set in Chicago in the early 90s, Candyman is a film about a student working on their thesis about folklore and urban legends. During her investigation, the student, Helen, learns of the legend of Candyman, a ghost who reportedly appears if you say his name 5 times in a mirror. Candyman then kills his summoner with a hook coming from a bloody stump where his hand used to be. Centered around the notorious Cabrini Green housing projects, Helen theorizes that Candyman is a creation of the residents to deal with the hardship and violence of the area. But as Helen's investigation persists, she learns the grim truth of the Candyman and the horror of his revenge. Candyman's themes and exploration of race, violence, and mortality have always put me in the right space of the world of darkness. Of course, many locations parallel the original Vampire the Masquerade setting from Chicago by Night. You can't beat that. Just as the spirit of Candyman slaughters those that summon him, it's easy to imagine Kindred looking down on the decaying sprawl of Chicago. Rituals and rites hidden from mortal eyes could summon a specter or something worse from the Shadowlands. The original Candyman movie is genuinely freaky, shocking, and one of my favorite horror films of all time. It's the one film I always go back to when I'm looking to get in the mind space of the world of darkness. Do you agree with my list? What's your list look like? I have so many movies and shows that I'm inspired by, I might make a second list if people are interested. Thanks for watching, and have a bitchin' day. Because the air is off. Law and Order, The Departed. Take 1.